Basically, mine kind of starts with kind of isolating each part of your body, and this comes in real handy for being a robot, because you don't want to second guess yourself. You want everything to be a muscle memory. So when we would start doing it, there's a lot of exercises about isolating each part. So one of the exercises that we do in mine class would be to move to a position, but only do it one body part at a time. And that really gets you thinking about the intricacies of each thing in your body, every joint, every muscle. Because we do things like pick up something so casually.
Damn you, Fago!
And we don't think about it. But when you're doing something that is not natural, and you're not touching something physical, you kind of have to break down how you get to a specific point in the action. So it's less about manipulating invisible objects at this point, and more about just trying to isolate each individual muscle. So we would get exercises like, okay, start from just standing, and then show excitement, and you'd have that idea in your head, like, okay, so I'm going to move each body part until I get into this expression that it shows off excitement, and it doesn't have to be very complicated, but once you start doing that kind of stuff. I mean, Bunny's already doing the robot now, but it's hard to break once
it's really hard.
Start doing it. So we start with exercises like that. So once you have the breakdown of each individual piece, you can kind of see the simplicity of it. It actually sells the robot rather than something more complex. Let's try picking up a cup, because everyone picks up cups in their day-to-day life. But when you don't have something physical to pick up, you kind of forget that, oh, here's the cup. But you have to have these moments of explosions where your grip shows that, oh, there's something solid there. Because in real life, you don't have to. Everyone can see the cup, but you have to your hand basically becomes the cup, if that makes any sense. And you kind of have to know exactly where you're putting it down. So there's these extra thoughts of it can't be released here. You can't just kind of casually pick it up and put it down because it doesn't look like anything. You got to have these moments where you're showing the audience where it is. So it looks a little cartoony because of that. Because in real life you can just do that, but it would be kind of like like you want to show that, oh, that's where my hand goes. So I guess the word would be it's theatrical. You're making a big show of picking up a cup, which we don't do too much on stage.
We have a few bits here and there.
We do a few bits where we do some space work, is what they call it, but for the most part, we stick to the robot. But this all is helpful trying to do it with the robot. I mean, we pretend we're driven by hydraulics and pistons and servos, so we're able to kind of incorporate all that into our movement. And over the years, we've just kind of developed our robots a little differently, each one of us, basically what we're comfortable doing. Rabbit is kind of a little more old tech, so there's a lot of piston sounds that Bunny will make, and it's basically isolating, making a little bit of a shake when you finally reach your destination with something. It shows that that object had momentum and it has to stop. And even though the motors are gone, you're still seeing the rest of the body shake a little bit. And all this it comes naturally after doing it for 9 years or so. But when you start doing it, it has to be something real simple. As simple as something like turning your head. So you can stand perfectly still and just turn your head left and right. And that conveys a robot. And it really is the simplest stuff can sell it. So if you're tired on stage, like we are all the time, sometimes when you're playing an instrument and stuff, the only thing you can do is move your head. And that little bit will read pretty far from even, the farthest back. And worst comes to worst, you can actually just stand still and play your instrument.
Very unnatural.
Yeah, I mean, that's the easiest thing to do. Sometimes just being very still will sell the robot too, which is also helpful because being so engaged with the robot for an hour and a half on stage is pretty impossible. If you're just doing the robot, you don't have to sing at the same time, you could probably get away with doing it. But it's definitely something to take into consideration, and we have after a few years. So with most of the robot stuff, it's less about trying to think about it all in your head, and eventually it becomes second nature only after you kind of isolate everything. So you come up with certain characteristics or traits that you just kind of repeat, and I think we all kind of do our own ones. I know the spine, I do this balancing thing where like the spine's constantly trying to rebalance himself on his feet, because at one point I thought, oh, the spine, you know, I've seen robots kind of do that. They have to constantly move, otherwise they just will fall over. But if you look at like old Disney animatronics, you'll notice that their feet are always completely planted. So I notice Rabbit does that a lot, where, you know, there's not much feet movement, and when there is, it's like very subtle. Whereas the spines, I imagine he's a little more, not updated tech, but that's kind of how we think about it. It's and so his is like